It's Tuesday, and you know what that means. A special Tuesday night edition of Real Talk. And of course, folks, brought to you by Jersey First TV. Always, I can't say enough how proud I am to be on the leader in independent media here in the Garden State. It's always Jersey First TV, folks. And I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so here on the 28th of May. Hopefully, everyone had a wonderful Memorial Day weekend. Certainly, it's important to remember why we celebrate Memorial Day and to honor all those brave men and women who have served and really to help preserve our democracy and our way of life. Hope you at least took a moment to remember that over this holiday weekend. Of course, it's great to catch up with friends, hit the beach, whatever the case may be. But again, let's never lose sight about what Memorial Day truly means for all of us. And again, I can't thank you enough for joining us from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard and, of course, on the Jersey First YouTube page. And, folks, I can't say enough really about how pleased we all are here at Jersey First for your support. Obviously, always liking us on Facebook, checking out all of our content, of course, following us on Instagram and Twitter. And, of course, for all you YouTube subscribers, if you haven't done so already, click on the subscribe button. And you'll be automatically notified about all the great content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week. And, of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download it, download the app, of course, apps, and take Jersey First TV with you throughout the summer months here, whether you're going down the shore, visiting in-laws, hey, taking the kids to soccer practice, maybe taking them to Sesame Place, to the American Dream Mall, wherever it is you're going, folks. I'm sure you have your smartphone with you. Hey, take Jersey First TV with you anywhere at any time. And I keep saying it, how privileged I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It is always Jersey First TV, educating and empowering and advocating for the residents of the state of New Jersey now more than ever. I cannot say enough how privileged I am to be working with them. Brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, courtesy of the amazing Elizabeth Nader, along with brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Rambola, also premiere on Thursdays. And, of course, folks, holiday weekend kind of pushed us to Tuesdays, but every Monday Night Live, again, check your local listings. You can check out the latest edition of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to stick around because I'm going to have a lot to say during Final Thoughts about Tom Moran. And I sort of learned over the weekend that perhaps NJ.com and the Star-Ledger might be going out of business. Well, not to say that I ever hold a grudge, but of course, Tom Moran and I don't exactly like each other. And, when Tom Moran decided to sort of, put me on blast in one of his columns, what you did, Tom, is you directly put yourself in my crosshairs forever. And of course, when I hear about the Star-Ledger and NJ.com maybe going out of business, I want to be encouraging. I want to support you. And maybe, a future career for you, of course, as we all know, is, of course, working at McDonald's. So, you might want to get used to asking people through the drive-thru window, hey, would you like some fries? That seems to be possibly the future for Tom Moran. More on that later during Final Thoughts. And, folks, I also want to mention as well the latest dissatisfaction I have with Insider NJ's resident clown, Jay Lasseter. More on these clowns later, folks, during Final Thoughts. But we got a jam-packed show for you tonight, a double main event, no less, ladies and gentlemen. And certainly it is election season. We have a lot to talk about during this election cycle. And why not kick it off with the first half of tonight's double main event? He is running for the United States Senate in the upcoming Republican primary 1 week from today, folks. Again, early voting starts this weekend. And, of course, polls open on Election Day at 6 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. Folks, he is one of the Republicans looking to win the primary next Tuesday, and he's a big fan of the show, apparently. He is Republican Curtis Bashaw. Join us here on Real Talk. Curtis, how are you?
I'm good, Fernando. How are you? Nice to be here today.
The pleasure's all mine, man. And, folks, again, check out the website here. Make sure I got it correctly. And if you're looking to get involved, I believe it's CurtisBashawForSenate.com. Is that right, Curtis?
That's right. Yes.
All right. Good stuff there. And obviously, you're there in sort of like, I guess, in the heartland of the GOP in New Jersey. That's down there in Ocean County. Certainly a lot to talk about, again, 1 week from today. So, Curtis, let's start off with really what was the epiphany for you when it came to making the decision to run in this primary?
Well, it built up over time. I am a lifelong business guy, a bunch of small businesses that I built into a medium-sized company, payroll by payroll, brick by brick, budget by budget down in Cape May, restoring old hotels. So I always was a Republican my entire life, voted since Ronald Reagan for Republicans in 1980, all the way through 2020. But the overregulation and the way small businesses are treated with these one size fits all regulations always irked me. The COVID lockdowns were an exclamation point to that we could lose our freedoms of assembly, worship, and enterprise in an instant. But subsequently, with Menendez corruption the second time around, and then the governor's wife thinking she could take the seat, it piqued my interest. I've always thought about going into politics, and this put me into it. So we joined the race in January because I believe the country's values are at a juncture point, and we need to step up and protect freedom, opportunity, and security for all New Jerseyans.
A lot there to unpack there. Folks, if you're just joining us live at 6:05 here on the East Coast, my guest tonight in the evening's first half of the double main event for Real Talk with Fernando Uribe. He is Republican U.S. Senate candidate Curtis Bashaw, joining us here live on Jersey First TV. Curtis, you mentioned about policy, and again, I'm a lifelong conservative. I'm someone that when I'm hearing this platform from you, it's music to my ears. I mean, the overregulations, we've been seeing what's going on in Washington. We're seeing what it's doing in Trenton, obviously to New Jerseyans. But at the federal level, we have seen the recklessness by this administration in the White House. Obviously, when it comes to fuel, inflation is still a serious problem. Interest rates are still a serious problem. And it's sort of like this delusional, I think, mindset by Democrats statewide and even nationally that like, well, inflation's still a problem, but the economy's still doing well. Again, I can't remember a paradox that ridiculous in my adult life, Curtis.
I agree 100%. I think New Jerseyans are focused on four main policy issues. One, inflation. No matter what the Biden administration says about how good the economy is, it's not around the kitchen tables of our state. Everyone feels the pinch of the inflationary time we've been in since Joe Biden took office, and food's expensive. It's also impacting our small businesses who also run cafes and diners. People are upset about inflation, and they don't understand why Washington spends so much money, which is why I believe we need outsiders to go there. The other three issues, in no order of importance, really is this border. It is loud and clear something that Democrat, Independent, and Republicans, New Jerseyans, are scratching their head over. It is a humanitarian crisis, and it is a national security risk. We were just there last week and watched migrants at 1:30 in the morning come through a big hole in the wall, an unfinished section of the border. We saw people arrive from China, from Syria, from Eastern Europe, from Ecuador, Venezuela, Peru, Mexico. And we saw them walk into our country unfettered. We do not have a border, and the sovereign nations need a border. And the impact on all of us, every state's a border state now under this policy. We have to secure this border, and we have to stop the illegal immigration that's happening in our country, that's taxing our resources and our New Jersey communities. Beyond that, the two other issues that I think New Jerseyans, one is a corollary, it's lack of support for law enforcement. People want to feel safe and secure in their homes. And finally, this lightning rod grassroots movement about parental rights. Government shouldn't be coming into our homes and telling us what to do, nor should schools be keeping secrets from parents about their children. So these are all common sense issues that I think Andy Kim, Phil Murphy, and Joe Biden are way to the left of even their own base on these issues. And that's the opportunity that we have in this cycle to take back this seat from the Democrats.
Curtis, one of the things that polling tells me, and again, I'm always very skeptical about polling. I think we've learned that going back to 2016. But one of the things that polling, again, I'm a data guy, I'm an academic, I'm always about quantitative stuff. And I look at the polling, and it's interesting because despite the fact that Andy Kim, for all likelihood is going to win the primary next Tuesday, against the other Democrat challengers he has, which again, it isn't saying much. He's running against two socialists basically. But Andy Kim is a guy who, and I don't mean this in an offensive way, he's kind of vanilla. I get it. He looks like the nice guy down the block who, will take out the landlady's garbage and pick up the paper for, someone an elderly neighbor. It just seems, though, he seems very vanilla on policies. And let's not forget, too, though, Andy Kim, while a member of the House of Representatives, I mean, has basically enabled an agenda by Nancy Pelosi and other members of the House leadership, which include the Squad and other members of the progressive left and the radical and the woke crowd. It's just interesting how, again, and I'm not surprised, the liberal media in New Jersey doesn't call Andy Kim on this, but he has voted basically with Nancy Pelosi and the far left since he's been in the House.
Yeah, I think the contrast, we cannot wait to get to the general election and contrast our experiences with Andy Kim. First of all, he wants a promotion, but he's only done 2 bills in 6 years in Congress.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he's ready for a promotion, number one. And what he has done, though, as you pointed out rightly, Fernando, is he has voted with the Squad and Joe Biden every single time. The other thing that distinguishes him is he'll talk about making sure businesses and corporations pay their fair share as if he has some divine knowledge of what fair is. But this is coming from a guy that's never signed the front side of a paycheck. He's never created a job.
Yeah.
We, on the other hand, are on the front lines of this economy. We've created 1,000 jobs over 35 years in our little community in Cape May through our hotels and restaurants. I've made a payroll every 2 weeks for 35 years. I've lived by a budget. These are things that people want common sense outside of the political insider world to go to Washington and bring people together and get things done. Andy Kim is part of that world. He's been an insider in Washington. He's always gotten paid by the federal government in one form or another. And we think that distinction is going to resonate with New Jerseyans.
Listen, I certainly hope so, Curtis, because, again, I think that someone like Andy Kim has really been going under the radar. I mean, do you really expect, folks, everyone out there, do we really expect the establishment media in New Jersey to really, really kind of put Andy Kim's feet to the fire? I mean, do we expect NJ Spotlight News with David Cruz? Never. Insider NJ with Max Pizarro? Never. And, the New Jersey Monitor? Never. It just seems like Tom Moran with the Star Ledger, it just seems like they're happy to salivate over a Democrat. And I get it that, they have their objections to Bob Menendez, the current incumbent in the seat. More on him later, though. But it just seems like they're so quick to jump on the Andy Kim train without even really holding him accountable. And again, it doesn't surprise anybody when it comes to sort of the coverage during this election cycle. But back to your campaign, though. And again, folks, if you're just joining at 6:12 here on the East Coast, our guest in tonight's first half of the evening's double main event is U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party, coming up next Tuesday in the primary. Curtis Bashaw, join us here on Real Talk. Curtis, when we think about, again, we look about the border. You mentioned that you were just there last week. And again, the Senate looks within reach for Republicans. I know that it's, polling tells us a lot about how poorly the president is scoring right now in polls. It seems like Democrats in the Senate know that they're vulnerable. There's only a 1-seat majority. This is an opportunity. Again, I'm not trying to, make anyone feel bad at home, but, last time a Republican held the U.S. Senate seat, I wasn't even born. Okay. So, I mean, this is how far back we're going. But I think that there's a really good chance in this cycle, especially with the disenchantment against Democrats, again, open border policy. It seems like, listen, we're only a couple of days away, and Joe Biden's going to be more preoccupied with pronouns than, fuel and property taxes and issues that matter at the kitchen table, not identity politics, not acquiescing to the woke mob that seems to be sort of taking over his administration. Is that fair to say?
It's totally fair to say. And I think people see the distinction and the difference. I'll tell you, if New Jerseyans have the right candidate on the Republican side, this cycle, this race is winnable for us. There is a pattern of chaos under Joe Biden, from the messy withdrawal from Afghanistan, Russia attacking Ukraine, Hamas attacking Israel, a wide open border, and chaos on our campuses. This is all the result of these liberal, extreme liberal policies that New Jerseyans are sick and tired of. They want change. And so our mission in this general election is to pull from those 2.5 million unaffiliated voters and even those Democrats that are scratching their head. It's not your grandmother's Democratic Party anymore. No. This is a radical party, and the policies are radical. And Joe Biden's leadership has been weak, which is why we need to elect Donald Trump this fall. and we need to have change and elect me for this Senate seat.
Curtis, obviously, it begs the question. Certainly, you have an opponent. Well, you have a few opponents on the ballot, but really the leading opponent you have was endorsed by the 45th president a couple of weeks ago in Wildwood. I happened to be there at that rally. I was sitting in the press pit, chatting with other journalists and seeing the turnout there. I know you were in attendance. I mean, obviously, there seems to be some discrepancy by the liberal media about what the attendance was. Listen, it was well over 50,000 people. Okay, it wasn't 10,000 like CNN reported. It's certainly, I mean, even Stevie Wonder, I think, could see what a crowd it was. But the point is that a lot of noise has been made, though, Curtis, about your opponent's endorsement by President Trump. What did that do in terms of, for your team, in terms of strategy, in terms of the get out the vote apparatus, in terms of going door to door, mobilizing? Did it change your strategy at all?
No, it did not at all. We knew that our opponent's husband had worked for Donald Trump for 14 or 11 years. He endorsed his colleague and his friend's wife for this position. And I certainly understand loyalty as it relates to our employees. I'm a loyal guy myself. It doesn't dissuade me from the fact that we need Donald Trump to beat Joe Biden, nor does it dissuade me that I am the right candidate to win this election in November. We went through a process from February 7th to March 19th of competing in 19 county conventions across this state. We talked to 10,000 duly elected Republican committee people, and we won 14 counties on the merits of the case we made at each of these conventions. New Jersey counties and the Republican Party selected us to endorse us for the primary. That's an endorsement I'm proud of. I'm the only candidate that went to all 19 county conventions. My main opponent, she skipped the 6 southern counties. She didn't even go. And, I'm running as Curtis Bashaw. I'm a Republican. I'm running for all New Jerseyans. We have the resources and the team that can mount a statewide race. We have the endorsements of 14 of our counties, which we earned on the merits. My opponent is home texting from her basement about her endorsement, and that's her single issue she's been working on this entire campaign. We are out there to focus on New Jersey first. I like the name of your station because that's our mission in this race. We want to work for all New Jerseyans. You realize under this Democratic monopoly in the Senate, New Jersey ranks 49th of the 50 states in what we get back from Washington.
That's right.
Yet we are the donors. We provide, we're number 3 or 4 each year in what we send to Washington. These Democrat senators haven't done their jobs to look out for New Jerseyans. President Trump's mission is to win the country, and so we don't have another Biden term. And my mission, which I feel best qualified for in this primary, is to take back this Senate seat for the first time in half a century for Republicans. And New Jerseyans are ready for it. And I believe they're going to support me in this primary. We are all over the state. I'm leaving here to go to more events tonight, and we'll be doing dozens and dozens of stops all over our 21 counties in the next week.
Curtis, you mentioned the county line, obviously going to county conventions. That's been a big topic during this election cycle, certainly on the opposing side. Obviously, the leading Democrat candidate pretty much kind of, I think for lack of a better word, I think discombobulated sort of like the establishment political apparatus, both for Democrats and at some point, maybe in 2025, for Republicans. Obviously, we know that federal lawsuit only applies to the Democrat primary, not the Republican one. A lot of people, a lot of insiders have called me privately and say, Fernando, I don't know why the county lines are still in effect for Republicans. But I mean, when you heard about what Democrats were able to do with abolishing the county line, did you feel that, is someone maybe going to do that with a Republican primary? And when that wasn't the case, I think a lot of people said, hey, you know what? Curtis maybe is in the driver's seat, despite the fact that the county line is still in effect for the upcoming primary. Do you feel that even regardless, do you feel the county line as a talking point, does it need to be abolished anyway?
Well, I had an amazing experience running those lines. There's only 3 offices in our state that compete statewide. Those are the 2 senators and a governor. So we went to 19 conventions. I call it the hazing of New Jersey politics. And I didn't think it was one person sitting there deciding to appoint me as the endorsed candidate. It wasn't in my experience. I had to call, meet with, convince all these 10,000 committee people to vote for us. These were, in most instances, ballot driven conventions. We gave speeches. Sometimes we met for an hour and a half with screening committees. We were vetted. And not only that, but this process enables you to get to know your state, the personalities of each county's needs and issues. And I'll say this too, it also to me gave a platform for all kinds of different people. We had up to 8 or 9 candidates at different conventions. I'm the only one that did all of them, but I think the line process is great. And I don't think it's the line per se. What it caused is for me to get to know and make friends all over New Jersey. And that's a strength going into this primary because we have friends in all 19 counties, even the ones in which we didn't win. And so I think the process, Andy Kim blew it up. He was happy to use it. 3 times he ran for Congress. And I think he got nervous about it with Mrs. Murphy in the race at the beginning. But on our side, we earned what we earned by hard work and grit and going all over New Jersey. And I feel the better for it.
Curtis, when you mentioned about endorsements, I mean, I know I interviewed one of the candidates early on in this race, and that was Alex Sedon, former News 12 New Jersey correspondent. And I know that when he dropped out, coincidentally, the same weekend that, the Queen, First Lady Tammy Murphy was forced to withdraw after the internal polling told her, like, hey, you need to get the hell out of this race, thankfully. Alex Sedon, after withdrawing from the race, immediately endorsed you. What was that endorsement like for you coming from Alex Sedon, who's a guy, again, who I respect wholly and wholeheartedly? Again, a guy who has cut his teeth in media. He's a guy who I think has a bright future in New Jersey politics for years to come. But he immediately endorsed you, though. What was that conversation like?
It was a natural outcome of what all of the candidates had been saying in the convention process, that Republicans need unity. We were hopeful that the Democrats were going to have a messy primary, but their discipline enabled them to consolidate quickly. That was a seismic change to our race. And Alex instinctively understood that. And he said, we need to unify to win. He dropped out and he endorsed our candidacy because we were the overwhelming front runner coming out of these conventions. So we believe that that is the case. We still have a primary coming up in 1 week. We can't wait for the state Republican voters to say who they want. And then we want to move on full of energy, vim, and vigor to take on Andy Kim this fall and bring this seat home.
Curtis, I'm always skeptical about turnout because what we've seen is that Republicans sometimes get a little fickle. We saw it in 2021, thus giving Phil Murphy a second term. We saw that last year during the legislative races. Is there a concern coming up a week from today that, because it is a primary, sometimes Republicans get a little lazy? I'm not saying you, but I mean generically, you may not check off enough boxes for people. And, Republicans get very fickle. It seems like Democrats get their act together. And if your name has a D next to it, they just suck it up and say, well, I'm going to vote for this person. It seems like Republicans don't do that very well. And it almost makes me think like this is why relying on independence is now more than ever so important.
Well, look, the Republican Party, I'm a 11th commandment of Ronald Reagan. We need to be unified and stop shooting each other in the back. I think that's the case. I'm on the ballot with President Trump in 14 of our counties. We want to all work together as a ticket to bring back a Republican majority in our state. I think that, yes, we need discipline, but that's why we're out going every day to 4 or 5 events, talking to New Jerseyans, building the enthusiasm. There is nothing like retail politics, and we are working it hard because people are hungry for change. They really are. And I think we will have a reasonable turnout this election. There's plenty of down ballot races that are contested, as well as our Senate race. But people understand that their duty is to vote. I think Republicans in New Jersey are tired of losing. They realize that lack of discipline may in part be part of that problem. So we have the issues on the table right now. They're as clear as a bell. They're simple. The border has to be closed. We have to support law enforcement. We need business people in Washington that can stop this reckless spending and tamp down inflation. We need small businesses to be unshackled from too much regulation so we can get back to that motto on our state flag, liberty and prosperity. I believe they go hand in hand. Without liberty, there won't be prosperity. And finally, the issue of the sanctity of our homes and our parents having the say in their children's education to raise them as they see fit. We need to keep schools from indoctrinating our kids and teaching the core basics, including our civics. What we saw on our college campuses was a lack of understanding of what the blessings of freedom mean. If you want free speech, you better be prepared to let somebody else whom you disagree with to have free speech also. And these are our core values as a country. I think the country's tired of where we've been. They're exhausted from the COVID lockdowns. They are ready for a new day in our politics. And I think that day is right around the corner. I hope that people support me on June 4th because we're the guy to bring back this Senate seat.
Curtis, when you talk about a new day, should you be victorious a week from today and hopefully victorious on November the 5th, once U.S. Senator Curtis Bashaw takes office on January 1st, 2025, and hopefully the 45th president becomes the 47th president, what would you like to tackle when you go to the White House? What do you want to sit down with the president and sit down and really tackle in your first term as a U.S. Senator?
Well, we obviously have to close this border and make it secure. And when we were there, we learned very plain and simply that, we shouldn't conflate border security, which is like locking up your house at night when you go to bed. It's not complicated to have a secure border with immigration policy. We can argue about how many, who, when, where, but the border security is just fundamental to our national security. So we need to tackle that. President Trump did an amazing job in a regulatory manner when he was president. And I'm very interested in making sure that we can restore us as the land of opportunity. We need to deregulate our businesses, stop overtaxing them so people are motivated and incentivized to make the economy grow. I have 1,000 employees. I started with 25. We did that because I love the free enterprise system and working to make things happen and to get things done. And we need our businesses unfettered. Donald Trump did a great job with our judiciary. I think our Constitution is one of the best documents ever written in the history of humanity. I trust that Constitution to guide our future. And we need judges that respect that Constitution and don't want to legislate from the bench. So we're fired up to get there and to work for New Jerseyans. We need to make sure that New Jersey's getting its due back from what it gives to the federal government. And we'll work very hard to accomplish that and make our decisions about what's best for New Jerseyans when we get to Washington.
Curtis, you mentioned judicial nominees. Certainly, I'm with you. I love the 3 nominees President Trump had during his first term. Again, as a conservative, as someone who believes in a constructionist majority, I love their decision-making. I'm with you. I don't like legislating from the bench. I don't like this sort of activism that we're seeing from many on the left. Again, I'm not an attorney, but I know enough to know that when you read the Constitution as is, that's the way the document should be interpreted, not your feelings, not what you think. It's as is. And so I'm always curious about, should Senator Bashaw sit on that committee? And hopefully, again, President Trump gets reelected. And again, there's two Supreme Court justices in their mid to late 70s. That's not old in life years, but on the bench, who knows? And maybe 1 or 2 vacancies opens up in the next term, which I think is why Donald Trump needs to get reelected. We can't have Joe Biden getting another pick or 2 for the Supreme Court. What's going to be the litmus test for U.S. Senator Curtis Bashaw upon, should you, be on that committee? I know, listen, abortion and reproductive rights gets weaponized every election cycle. I think we've already seen that already. It's been relegated to the states. But what's the litmus test for potentially U.S. Senator Curtis Bashaw?
Well, I think the litmus test is you want people that understand and appreciate our Constitution and understand that they're there to adjudicate the laws, not to legislate from the bench. And I think as a country, we've gotten ourselves in trouble when we've had the judiciary legislating from the bench. And to me, that's the primary important factor when it comes to judges.
Curtis, I know you'll be leaving shortly. I appreciate as much time as you can give me here. We'll be wrapping up just in a moment here, but I really want to sort of get back to your campaign. And I know you've talked about the border, we've talked about taxes, the economy, but I think another issue I think that really has not gone discussed a lot during the cycle, and really I think it's sort of intentionally by the establishment media, is infrastructure. And I think New Jersey, more than any other state in the country, it's the most densely populated state in the country, but our bridges are lacking. Our roads are still a mess. What would you like to see done again in your capacity as a United States Senator to address infrastructure? Again, we have a joke of a Secretary for Transportation and Pete Buttigieg, as well as the rest of the cabinet for Sleepy Joe. What would you like to see addressed when it comes to infrastructure?
Well, I think that building stuff and fixing stuff is something Americans have always been good at. That sign coming into Trenton always on the bridge there that says Trenton makes, the world takes, grieves me that we don't make so much stuff anymore. I think we need to be resilient, make things, bring jobs home, create jobs here in America. I think the infrastructure bill that Joe Biden likes to brag about was really part of a much broader political agenda as it relates to that Green New Deal. And I think that we're making the infrastructure even that much more expensive because of the mandates in that bill. And I think to simplify and to fix up our roads, bridges, parks, and make this country proud of its infrastructure again is a huge and important task that needs to be tackled.
Curtis, tariffs continue to be a big discussion. We talk about inflation, we talk about food prices. Again, what can you do in your capacity as a U.S. Senator to address that with hopefully a Republican president? Because at the end of the day, is it about taxing imports? Is it about maybe producing more products domestically? Obviously, we know we need to drill domestically. We need to stop relying on foreign oil. What is, again, in your capacity, in your business knowledge, what is the best way to tackle inflation?
The best way to tackle inflation is to not spend too much money and deficit spend, because you devalue the dollars that you have by building up debt or printing money. And we need the discipline of living by a budget, but we also need to invest in our growth. And this is where the Democrats say they want growth, and they just put mandate after mandate after mandate. Joe Biden just did a mandate the other day on salary caps, where overtime is counted. That was something Obama tried to do that President Trump stopped it in 2016, which I think was really good. These one-size-fits-all mandates are impeding our business, and we need to let liberty and prosperity go hand in glove and grow this economy. Growth solves a lot of problems. Fiscal discipline solves a lot of problems. And so as a business guy, I'm into both of those things. We grew our business and we lived by a budget.
Curtis, we've gotten to know you as the candidate. Let's get to know Curtis Bashaw, the guy, as we're about to wrap up here. Favorite MLB team?
Major League Baseball. Well, I'm from down south there in near Philadelphia, so I'm a Phillies guy.
Oh, man, I'm a Yankee fan. All right.
I'm sorry about that. I went to a Yankees game just a few weeks ago. I always go to a Yankee game once a season. I love that stadium and the traditions there. So I have lots of family in Bergen County. So we're exposed to both teams. But if I was not for the Phillies in Cape May, I would be sent packing.
Well, I think I know the answer to this one here. Favorite NFL team?
I'm going to stick with the Eagles. The Birds have an energy to them that's just, that stadium just blows up at games, and I've never seen anything like it.
Well, Curtis, I'm a diehard Cowboy fan. I go to the link every year for that game, and I feel I need a tetanus shot when I'm in Philly that long. I don't know about you. Hockey, NBA, and NHL, brother.
Gosh, you're asking me all kinds of sports. I remember when the Flyers did their little hat trick and had won all those Stanley Cups. I remember those parades. I was a little kid. It's hard to get that out of your blood. I have lots of friends that are Pittsburgh fans with hockey. That's a team that people sort of love. And basketball, I really don't have a favorite basketball team, I hate to say.
Okay, and favorite American president?
Oh, my goodness. I think Abraham Lincoln just was a standout. He was our first Republican president. He was a humble guy. He was a smart guy. He figured out how to get things done. He was a magnanimous man. And I just read this book about his approach. He wanted a decisive, unconditional surrender in the Civil War, but he wanted a very magnanimous bringing us back together again. And, he was shot not long after that war ended, and we missed the opportunity to see what he could have done. He may have made things in a way that could have made us even more unified today. But that monument, the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., is always an inspiration. Both his second inaugural address and the Gettysburg Address are classic, beautiful statements about America. I respect Lincoln the most.
Hey, the father of the Republican Party, no less. Curtis, once again, it is Curtis Bashaw for Senate.com, right? If you look for if anyone that's interested in donating, I know it's a week to go, or looking to get involved or volunteer for the campaign. Listen, I really appreciate your time. Obviously, I've had the opportunity to interview both Republican candidates during this cycle right now, leading up to primary day. I want to thank you for your time. I'll give you the last word here tonight on Real Talk.
Well, Fernando, I so appreciate it. We're on a mission to expand the Republican tent. We believe it's not just independents and Democrats to join us, but it's people from all over our state and lots of communities in our urban cities, in our suburbs, and in our rural areas. We have a farm in Cape May, Beach Plum Farm. We have been all into Patterson and campaigning there already. We want to expand this Republican tent and take these values. And, we're just 2 years away from our 250th anniversary as a country. And people aren't so happy. We've got to restore our pride in the blessings of liberty that we enjoy in this country. And I'm very honored to be doing this. It's been the most invigorating thing I've ever done. And we want to work for all New Jerseyans and ask for your support on June 4th in this primary so we can go on to win this seat in November.
Folks, again, if you don't vote, hey, listen, it's hard to complain here. Get involved. Early voting begins this weekend. And so on Election Day, next Tuesday, primary day, polls open at 6 a.m. and close at 8 p.m. You have choices out there for all my fellow Republicans. You have choices out there. Tonight, it's a good one with Curtis Bashaw here, our guest on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Curtis, best of luck to you with a week to go. And listen, should you be victorious next Tuesday, we'll have to talk again later this summer and going into the fall here on Jersey First TV.
Look forward, Fernando. Thanks very much. Great to see you.
Best of luck. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Folks, great interview there, as always, every week here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe via Jersey First TV. And without a doubt, obviously, getting a lot of the candidates out there during this election cycle. I've interviewed both Republicans and Democrats. It's always a very interesting dynamic when it comes to election season. And, one of the things, and again, folks, you definitely want to stick around. We do have the second half of tonight's double main event. A guy who you've seen on this program in previous years, obviously gaining a very deserved victory, legally against Governor Murphy and Attorney General Matt Placken. Ian Smith, entrepreneur Ian Smith, former House candidate back in 2022 in the 3rd Congressional District. He'll be joining me in just a few minutes. You definitely want to stick around for that. And you definitely want to stick around for final thoughts, ladies and gentlemen, because I have a lot to say about Tom Moran and Jay Lassiter. They always make it very easy for me every single week during final thoughts. But again, you want to stick around, folks. We'll have Ian Smith live on the program in just a few minutes. You definitely don't want to go anywhere. Sharing is caring. Click that share button, obviously on your smartphone, on your PC, tablet, or Mac, however it is you're listening live tonight here on a special Tuesday night edition of Real Talk via Jersey First TV. So again, you want to stick around. Ian Smith will join us in just a few minutes, ladies and gentlemen. So you do not want to go anywhere. But in the meantime, one of the things I really want to focus on, and again, it's not so much a final thoughts, but sort of like an opinion here I want to give about this election cycle. And one of the things, ladies and gentlemen, that we do here on Jersey First TV better than anybody in New Jersey is talk about the issues that matter most to everyday Garden State residents. And listen, it's May the 28th. Obviously, I'm dreading in the next 3 days because once June 1st comes, obviously we'll have to endure Pride Month, 30 days of some of the most insufferable nonsense, for example. But this is the stuff, folks, that the establishment liberal media in New Jersey and nationally wants to focus on. Okay? The nonsense of pronouns instead of focusing on property taxes, interest rates, quality of life. Folks, this is where I think it's a reminder that you have a choice coming up this November, that you have a choice. And I get it that a lot of people I talk to, whether it be on social media or via email, via WhatsApp, via text messaging, say to me, Fernando, bro, I get it. You're a conservative. I get it. You're an academic. You're a philanthropist. You're an award-winning journalist. You're all these things. I get it, man. But I just don't like this election cycle. I just don't like my choices. Folks, I cannot say this enough. You do have a choice coming up on November the 5th, this fall. Okay? And what we've seen again, and forget about the t-shirt, okay, that's right behind me. Regardless of that, that's just me being Fernando Uribe. Okay? There's a choice you have this November. What we have seen, again, to his credit, Curtis Bashaw, my guest tonight during the first half of tonight's double main event, said it perfectly. People are tired. People are exhausted. Okay? After the COVID lockdowns that lasted a lot longer than they should have, with this governor in New Jersey and even across the river in New York with Andrew Cuomo and, of course, his successor, Kathy Hochul. Okay? Even up Route 95 into Connecticut with Ned Lamont and other blue governors throughout the country. We saw the damage that they did with tyrannical COVID restrictions. We saw what Phil Murphy did to this state. Now, whether or not the emperor ever gets held accountable, we don't know. Tough to say with this legislature because we know that even before with the previous Senate president, Steve Sweeney, he never called Phil Murphy out or held him accountable when we all know that he was getting the science wrong. Okay? And I get into arguments all the time with people online about, COVID this, and, well, Fernando's not vaccinated. And folks, I never even took a flu shot. The last time I took a flu shot, for example, I was a senior in high school. I wasn't even 18 years old. But again, when you're 17 years old and you're in high school and you're told, hey, yes, get a flu shot. It's going to be good for you. Guess what? I did do that. And I learned my lesson. And I never subjugated myself to any shots ever again. And that's the same mindset that I put forth when it came to COVID. Now, a lot of you out there are going to say, well, Fernando, it's not the same thing. No, it is the same thing. Okay? It's not politics telling me what to do with my body. It's me telling me what to do with my body. And it's interesting because, a lot of people on the left and Democrats and progressives and the woke mob always want to talk about, well, my body, my choice. It's really funny that during COVID, when people like me would espouse the same rhetoric, we'd be vilified. We'd be vac-shamed, right? We would be made to feel ostracized in the workplace. And I know many people, hundreds of people that I know that felt that way in the workplace too. But that, again, is a product of tyrannical measures when it came to COVID. And that's a big topic coming up because, again, my next guest coming up in a few minutes is going to talk all about that because he was at the center of that storm back during the height of the pandemic in 2020. Again, folks, stick around. Ian Smith will be joining us in just a little bit, so you don't want to go anywhere for that. But, folks, again, this election cycle, whether it's about inflation, whether it's about interest rates, folks, again, let me just give you a perspective here. Again, and I talked to a lot of realtors, both in North Jersey, Central Jersey, South Jersey, where interest rates are crippling white people, black people, brown people from sort of gaining the American dream, right? Don't we hear about getting that first car, first new car, or that first home? That is the American dream, folks, and that has become an impossibility with this president. That has become an impossibility under Joe Biden. Now, people want to say, well, the president of the United States morally is a better man than his opponent. Well, folks, that's neither here or there. If Joe Biden and his son Hunter ever get held accountable for what I think is some criminal activity, that remains to be seen. But what have we seen during this election cycle? Witch hunts, right? We've seen a witch hunt with the 45th president, and some would argue, because we're seeing it sort of play out in court now, a witch hunt, quite possibly, with the sitting senior United States Senator. And I've said it on the show before, folks. All it takes is one juror to believe the narrative that, which is true, that the FBI is out to get people, that the Department of Justice is being weaponized, that the Office of the U.S. Attorney is being weaponized to go after the political enemies of the President of the United States. Okay? So whether it's Donald Trump or whether it's Bob Menendez, folks, if you think at home that there aren't people right now wondering to themselves, if they can do this to a sitting U.S. president, well, a former U.S. president, and a current United States senator, that the Department of Justice can be weaponized to go after people like that, then folks, none of you at home are safe either. And that's not me being hyperbolic. That's not me being, hysterical. That's me telling you the truth. And this election cycle, again, I'm not trying to say to ring some sort of alarm bell, but folks, I cannot recall in my adult life a more important presidential election in my adult life. And I've been voting for presidents for some years now, for some terms now. And I've never voted for a Democrat for president. Why? Because Democrats at the national level don't share my vision of what I believe in for a Supreme Court, about a constructionist Supreme Court, about reading and interpreting the United States Constitution as is. Not how you feel about it, not what, not legislating from the bench and engaging in judicial activity. That's not what judges are supposed to do. And again, I don't have a law degree, but I know enough about the law that I can tell you that a constructionist majority is better for the country than a liberal majority. And what have we seen in the last few years at the end of the court calendar for the Supreme Court? Because of the 3 justices that President Trump nominated, and thankfully, the Senate confirmed. Okay. Folks, just as a reminder here, again, he's running a little bit late. Ian Smith, entrepreneur Ian Smith, you all remember him, obviously, taking on Governor Murphy during COVID. He'll be our guest. He'll be joining us in just a few minutes. If you want to stick around, folks, Ian Smith's going to have a lot to say about what's going on right now in New Jersey politics and obviously his recent court decision. So you definitely want to stick around for that. But getting back to the election cycle, what we have is a president that cognitively is declining every single day. Folks, it's interesting. Joe Biden is 81 years old. Donald Trump is 78 years old. Now, it's only 3 years, but you could not find a more distant disconnect between between 2 men during this election cycle. And yes, I'll even say 3 men as well, because I know Robert Kennedy Jr. will be on the ballot. He's running as an independent. There's a concern, obviously, that RFK Jr. might take votes away from Joe Biden. Not necessarily Donald Trump, but whenever there is a third-party candidate, the incumbent tends to sort of be at a disadvantage. We saw that in 1992 with George H.W. Bush against then challenger Arkansas Governor Bill Clinton, and we all saw the spoiler effect by Texas billionaire Ross Perot. Okay. To some extent in 2000, we saw that with Pat Buchanan being a little bit of a spoiler when George W. Bush, then governor of Texas, took on the sitting vice president, Al Gore. Now, we'll see exactly what RFK Jr. is going to do during this election cycle. We're going to see if he'll be allowed to participate in debates with President Biden and former President Trump. Okay. But when we think about this election cycle, we think about a president, once again, who was a disaster with his pullout in Afghanistan, leaving U.S. Marines behind. We saw what this president has done by basically undoing everything via executive order to protect the border that his predecessor did an exceptional job at. We've seen what an open border has caused. We've seen the criminality by illegal immigrants in this country. We've seen American citizens being raped and murdered at the hands of illegal immigrants? Isn't it funny, folks, for many liberals and progressives and those on the left, that whenever there's a school shooting or a shooting of any kind, immediately let's go to gun control because we have to do that. But when illegals are committing crimes and they're doing that every single day, there's never a call by the left or by Democrats or progressives to secure the border immediately. Isn't that funny? Right? When you hear U.S. Senate candidates like Patty Campos Medina, who, by the way, I wouldn't let this woman run a hot dog stand in the middle of the summer. That's how incompetent this woman is. Or Larry Ham, another race hustler who thinks we should be paying for reparations. These are the type of people that Democrats rally behind, right? An open border is a disaster to us. Because what's happening, folks? An open border is allowing us, again, it's pretty much inviting the third world to make the third world here. That's what it's doing. So when you have organizations like the New Jersey Alliance for Immigrant Justice, led by its executive director and useless cat lady, Amy Torres, or Make the Road New Jersey with some other insufferable feminists, or the ACLU of New Jersey, who it seems were its executive director, Amol Sinha, seems more interested in winning awards and not really interested in the quality of life for Americans, but somehow the civil liberties of illegal immigrants. I mean, it makes you wonder, folks, about those on the far left and progressives. Where are their priorities? And it seems like this president is more than happy to acquiesce to the woke mob. We see it during Pride Month, right, folks? Get ready for what you're going to see on the White House lawn during Pride Month. You're going to see drag queens, mentally ill people, trans people, right? That's what they are. They're mentally ill. I don't mind saying that, all right? Because it's funny what people want to claim about, the World Health Organization and doctors. Yeah, gender dysphoria, huh? Yeah. It's kind of interesting when you want to think certain medical conditions are viable and you want to not declare a mental illness anymore. Isn't it interesting, folks, about doctors? How they pick and choose when science is applicable, right? I mean, folks, I'm not a medical doctor. And I can tell you in my capacity as a PhD that I took high school biology at some point before applying to Rutgers for my undergraduate studies. And I remember passing high school biology. It seems like those on the left in New Jersey never took high school biology or passed it or never took an anatomy and physiology course. I know I did and passed it. But never mind about Pride Month coming up or the fact that this is an administration that would rather coddle illegals, right? Dollars that should be going to American citizens, to veterans, to the elderly, to children. You want to talk about why school lunch programs aren't being funded? Well, why not? Take money away from Ukraine and that corrupt regime with President Zelensky. You can see people in Ukraine are living pretty well off the billions of dollars from Americans. Fund school lunches. Okay? Fund more programs for mental health for our veterans, for the elderly, because there are still people still recovering from COVID that need mental health resources. Take those billions of dollars that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are so proud to send overseas, keep them here. Folks, now more than ever, I cannot say it enough. And again, folks, you want to stick around again, Ian Smith will join us in just a few minutes. So again, he's a little running behind schedule. We appreciate his time here tonight. We'll definitely get him on in a few minutes, so you don't want to go anywhere, folks. Ian Smith will join us in moments. And of course, you definitely want to stick around for final thoughts as well. Click that share button because sharing is caring here on Jersey First TV. But folks, I cannot say it enough. Coming up on November the 5th, you do have a choice. And it's not about your feelings. It's not about, it's about most folks. It's about your pocket. Folks, it's about Americans sitting around the kitchen table thinking, what do I do if Joe Biden gets reelected? Can I afford to pay rent? Can I afford to maybe finance or lease a new vehicle? Because interest rates are up, are skyrocketing. Okay. Can I afford food? Can I afford fuel? Again, it's the summer. Memorial Day weekend is sort of the unofficial start of summer, even though the real start of summer starts sometime in June. But driving down the shore, folks, I drove down to Point Pleasant on Sunday. By the way, nice job with Martel's Tiki Bar. Great staff, great service there, great drinks. Folks, again, you want to be careful with those tiki teas at Martel's Tiki Bar in Point Pleasant. Okay? You have more than 3, you're asking for trouble. But I remember filling up my gas tank, and guess what? $40 cash still wasn't enough. Those are the times we were living at. So for everyone out there at home, for all my friends who are liberals or progressives or part of the woke mob and everything, you're more concerned again with pronouns and making sure that the LGBTQ plus minus 1, 2, folks, I can't even keep up, okay, with the acronym now. I mean, it's like they're adding consonants and vowels every chance they can, or symbols, I don't know. This election cycle, listen, you don't have to like the 45th president, but you can respect it. In 4 years, folks, we weren't involved in any wars. Interest rates remained stable. Your 401k looked better. Fuel prices were very reasonable. Okay, we were drilling domestically. Every single metric that tells you you were doing better on January 19th, 2021, it's not even debatable, folks. Okay? Since January 20th, 2021, what we have seen with Joe Biden has been an absolute disaster. To say nothing of the fact, again, you want to reelect Joe Biden? Again, I got to question your political IQ. But here's another scary scenario. You reelect Joe Biden, and God forbid something happens to the president. I mean, listen, he falls down the stairs every other week. And we end up getting stuck by order of succession with Vice President Kamala Harris becoming the president of the United States. Okay? This incompetent woman, as you can see, they're limiting her public appearances. They're making sure she doesn't get behind a microphone because, folks, when you listen to this hyena get behind a microphone, it's scary. We have become a joke to the world, folks. Okay? I have family overseas in Spain and Colombia. They look at the United States as a mirror image of what it once was. And this president and vice president, all they have done, okay, all they have done is weaken this country economically, globally, and fiscally. That is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have done in 4 years. It's going to take the business acumen and the successful policies that we saw. And again, folks, I get it. People want to say, well, you know, the president of the United States has this many indictments. Folks, let's be real. Okay. If there was ever really any justice, criminals like Bill and Hillary Clinton and Hunter Biden would be in prison. So before you come in with your sanctimony about, well, Donald Trump's a criminal, to the best of my knowledge, he hasn't been convicted of anything yet. You want to talk about criminality? Folks, it's the Clinton family. It's the Clintons. It's Bill and Hillary. It's Hunter Biden and his father to some extent. Okay? But again, if you want to focus on who Donald Trump is as a person, that's your business. But you're not going to win the argument with me about the policies of the 45th president and how they work. They work with fuel. They work with foreign policy. They work with interest rates. They work with keeping inflation reasonable, which it was, with selecting good judicial nominees to the United States Supreme Court. Okay. Brett Kavanaugh, Neil Gorsuch, Amy Coney Barrett, 3 very good jurists, okay, that understand jurisprudence, that understand the importance of interpreting the Constitution as is, okay, reading the document and reading it as is, and interpreting the law as is, not how they feel, not if they woke up on the wrong side of the bed that morning and for whatever reason at the local Starbucks there wasn't enough soy milk or almond milk and they're just in a pissy mood. No, folks, it's about being good jurists on the bench. And that's what Donald Trump gave you. Okay? That's what Donald Trump gave you. Okay? With 3 very good judicial nominees, not to mention also all the other judicial nominees at the federal court, the appeals court, circuit courts, incredible judicial nominees, which is not just, folks, it's not just about Donald Trump winning the presidency this November. It's about Republicans winning the Senate. That's what's at stake in this election cycle. We've been exhausted, folks, from COVID. We've been exhausted about identity politics. That is what this president has given us. He doesn't deserve another 4 years, another 4 months, another 4 weeks, 4 days, or 4 minutes. The choice is clear on November 5th, folks, and it's President Donald Trump. Folks, we talk about COVID. I know we talked about it briefly with the first half of tonight's double main event. U.S. Senate candidate Curtis Bashaw. And again, we know what the draconian measures and the tyrannical measures of COVID did to us, not just nationally, but here in New Jersey. And a guy who I was privileged to talk to during the height of the pandemic, when a lot of other journalists in New Jersey didn't want to talk to this guy, I did. And I was ahead of everybody else when it came to this in New Jersey media. Because guess what? 4 years later, people like me, we were proven right. But more importantly, people like my guest were proven right as well. And I can't say enough how privileged I am to have with me here, folks, the second half of tonight's double main event. He is an entrepreneur and apparently a big fan of Real Talk via Jersey First TV. He's my good friend, Ian Smith, joining us here on Real Talk. Ian, how are you, brother?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good, man. It's good to talk with you. And listen, it's been some time. It's been a couple of years. A lot's changed, but certainly I know a lot of people, once they learned you were going to be my guest tonight, they were like, oh my God, that's amazing. Leave it to Fernando to be the only journalist to really get a scoop like this. And more importantly, talk to a guy like Ian Smith, who 4 years later, man, you're on the right side of history, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, I think a lot of us were. You know, we had a ton of support in what we did, and it would not have been possible had it not been for the local community, the community throughout the state of New Jersey, and the community we ultimately built nationally and internationally. We proved a lot of people right with our action.
No, you certainly did. And I know that, and we'll get into what you're doing now as opposed to when I first met you in 2020 online. I know that, again, you became a viral star during the height of the pandemic. I know you were on Tucker Carlson when he was on Fox. I know you and your former partner were regulars, I believe, really on the political talk circuit about your defiant stand against the emperor that we all know. Again, and listen, I'm hoping that at some point Phil Murphy gets held accountable for what he did because he was tyrannical during COVID. We've all learned about learning loss with our kids. We've all seen what he did to businesses. We've all seen he's never been held accountable. I'm hoping he does one day. I mean, sometimes, karma has a funny way of acting, and hopefully karma gets to Phil Murphy. But I can tell you part of that karma, though, Ian, is legally what happened in your case. Now, if you can, again, I'm not sure if you're at liberty to talk about too much of it, but let's separate fact from fiction about what your recent victory means and what exactly does it consist of.
Sure. So I guess the shortest way I can put it is we originally were given a whole bunch of municipal citations. They included violation of a governor's orders, like public nuisance, a whole bunch of other misdemeanors, zoning violations, anything that they could sort of throw to us. And that was at the very beginning when we opened up. And we eventually got 2 more rounds of those for operating without a business license and some other miscellaneous ones as well. But what the state did early on is they realized that those municipal citations really didn't mean anything because they're municipal infractions. They're fines. It's not a serious crime. And the municipal citation for violation of a governor's orders didn't really satisfy what Governor Murphy wanted to do. He wanted to put us out of business. He wanted to, to completely destroy us. And again, it's just this fine. So they took those charges, those municipal citations, alongside of Judith Persicelli's health department shutdown, which we also ignored, and Governor Murphy's executive order. And they went to a state judge by the name of Judge Robert Luggie, who just so happened, just coincidentally, to be up for tenure that year. And he did get it, obviously. And they took that request to the judge and said, Judge, will you please give us a court order? So those are where all of the really severe and very tangible punishments came from. If anybody's familiar with the story, which I'm sure at least some of your viewership is, we were fined $15,000 per day. We had hundreds of thousands of dollars taken from our bank accounts. We had all these other really severe punishments. They all came not from violation of a governor's orders, but violation of a court order. So the victory that we've just had is that all these municipal charges, because they have not been touched in 4 years, 3 years, and 2 years, because there's multiple rounds of them, all of those charges have now been dismissed against the both of us. So that was one of the elements on which the case built this court order on. So the victory is not a complete victory by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a very, very significant one, because now we have the ability to go back both individually and as the gym and go back and say, hey, is this court order still valid? Because there's no crime, there's no municipal charges. And this was one of the things that the court order was built on. So obviously, these things take a lot of time. It's very funny when, back in the days of COVID, the state would move against us and we would be in court the same day. We would get calls from our attorneys and they would say, get ready for court. And we'd say, when? And they'd be like 2 hours. But when you move against the state, it's a very different story. These things move painfully slow. There's still an appeal that hasn't been touched in 2 years. So it does give us the ability to go back and revisit this stuff and at least start to dismantle what has been done to us, and possibly coming back for retribution and making sure that the people that did these things don't go unpunished. But that will be a long journey. Anytime you move against the state, like I said, things move very, very slowly.
You know what? And it's tragic that it happens that way, Ian. Folks, if you're just joining us live right now, it's a little after 7 o'clock here on the East Coast. My guest right now is the second half of tonight's double main event. He's entrepreneur, and I would argue crusader, a really, really great crusader, Ian Smith, here join us on Real Talk. Ian, maybe you're not at liberty to sort of share this information yet based on legal advice and counsel, but is there a window perhaps or an opportunity that based on these charges being dismissed, that you and your partner will be able to sue the state of New Jersey because of what's happened? Or is that not possible right now? Or is that a bridge you're not looking to cross yet?
I think fundamentally the first thing that we have to do is go back and and this is speculation. I've talked to my attorneys and we haven't really dug really deep into it yet. We wanted to sort of celebrate the victory and sort of enjoy that we got something. But as we dive deeper in, I think the first logical step would obviously just be undoing the court order itself. Before you go after the state, you have to prove that what they did was fundamentally wrong. So we still haven't got to that point in the sort of the legal pathway. So now we know that the charges, that the state partially based its case against us on are completely invalid, cannot be revisited at any point. They were dismissed with prejudice on 2 different counts. The first count was that it violated our right to a speedy trial. These things hadn't been touched in years. There was no discovery from the state upon multiple requests. There was no discovery or instruction from the township of Belmar upon request. So the judge dismissed it, obviously so, because of the failure to adhere to a right to a speedy trial, but also the charges against us for operating without a mercantile license. That's a whole nother legal avenue and a whole nother legal battle. But the township of Belmar had taken our business license, and state law is very clear in stating that the state issues licenses for gyms and health clubs, and that the township actually had no authority to give a business license in the first place, nor to take it. So those charges were dismissed on that. So, to sort of to bring it all to a conclusion, the first thing that we have to do is undo the court order itself. And then if we're successful in that, there is the ability to go back and to sue for damages and to really sort of at least bring some justice and a little bit of retribution. How much we can bring upon Murphy, obviously he's very well protected by the court system and the political system. But we'll certainly, I think at least I can speak for myself, but we'll certainly try.
And what's tragic though, Ian, is that, taxpayers like me are the ones that suffer because, should you win in court, it's Phil Murphy's negligence and really, again, his tyrannical policies that are going to cost taxpayers should you be successful. And again, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for you. And I'm hoping that you sue Murphy and the state for everything possible, because we saw what happened. And I talked about, I talked about this before during my monologue before you came on. We all saw what we lived through during the summer of 2020. We all saw what blue governors like Phil Murphy and Andrew Cuomo and then Kathy Hochul and then Lamont did here on the East Coast, even in Pennsylvania. I mean, we saw tyrannical policies that created learning loss for our kids in our public schools. We kept our schools closed longer than they had to. Thousands of businesses were killed. I mean, it's heartbreaking to people that I know, not just you, but other business owners I know that were just harmed directly because this governor wanted to politicize a virus, when we all know that governors like Ron DeSantis in Florida and Greg Abbott in Texas, they got it right. And I think it's a stain on Phil Murphy's legacy. I think, among other things, that the emperor really has accumulated in terms of his legacy. But I think this is the one that stands out the most, in my opinion.
Yeah, any of these governors that mishandled the COVID, not mishandled. I don't think mishandled is the correct word for it. Who intentionally used the COVID narrative to further political agendas. All of these people will obviously pay for that politically, and hopefully one day they'll pay for it personally. There are statutes in effect that allow politicians and public officials to be held personally responsible if it's seen that they've violated their oath of office. So again, these are all things you have to take it one day at a time in the court system, and things move slow, but it doesn't mean that things aren't happening.
Well, Ian, the last time I dealt with you on a personal level, I mean, it was back 2 years ago when you ran for a House seat during the midterm elections in 2022. I know after that, you remained very active and visible. You spoke at CPAC. You were always a very visible speaker at a lot of conservative events because of your courage during the pandemic, the way you stood up to Governor Murphy, the way you stood up to essentially Joe Biden during that time frame. And I know now, obviously, it's my understanding you're no longer living in New Jersey. You've pursued another venture, another business. Sort of for our audience, at least, tell us about that journey now.
Sure. So running for Congress was honestly one of the most challenging things I've ever done. And, if I do have one regret, it's that I didn't run at the state or the local level. So for anybody watching who, saw my run or gets inspired by somebody else running, I can tell you that you will be more likely to get in, and you will be much more likely to make a real impact on your community. And that impact is far more important. That was my only regret, running for Congress, is that I thought that it would be more influential to run higher. But the change really does happen in our communities, and in a place like New Jersey, where our state government is sort of out of control, those are the really, really important battles. Just a tidbit for anybody who considers or is politically active, these are the races that you really want to focus on. But yeah, afterwards, I started some new business ventures, and I was able to move. I have a young son now, and I was able to move down to Florida, where.
Congrats to you. I remember seeing that on Instagram. Congrats to you, brother. I was really happy for you. Yeah. Thank
you. It's a blessing from God. But I was able to move my family down here in Florida, and it's a wonderful thing. We're still politically active down here. Really at the local level, there's a great sheriff in this county, so I'm working really hard with his team to make sure that we keep it that way. And there's a whole lot of like county commissioner seats that are very impactful on the way that a place gets developed and, you know, the type of businesses that move in. And this is a very special area. So, you know, we want to keep it that way. And like I said, I've just noticed that politically, you know, if people want to really make a difference, it's at the local level. So I'll be focusing my attention, you know, right here where it counts.
Bro, I gotta tell you, man, that level of transparency and I think of self-awareness, I think is refreshing to hear. Listen, you're right. I mean, if you can get involved at the local level, county commissioners, municipal level, legislative races, I think, listen, you hit it on the head. I think that's a great way to get started and try to really, really enact some sort of change and influence. You know, I'm glad to see you're doing that in the freedom
Especially
of
in places like New Jersey. There's a lot of seats that are run unchallenged, you know, and these are the positions that wind up picking your local candidates. You know, I wasn't the GOP favorite when I ran in my district, and that goes a long way. And you know, people just filling those seats can have a significant impact on who the GOP actually winds up putting up and who they wind up putting all of their money behind, because in races that matter, that's what really happens. Is, you know, money is a critical factor in politics, and if you have the support of the party at the ground and at the local level, you will get the funding. You know, so we want to make sure that we put good candidates in there, and seats like county commissioner and stuff like that throughout Jersey. There's a lot of empty seats, especially on the right. And those are things that that doesn't take a whole lot of contribution. It does take a whole lot of your time, but really does have a meaningful impact on your local community.
Ian, what is your new business venture centered around?
Hormonal health for men and women. So we opened a telehealth clinic that services all 50 states. And we work with men and women to get easy and comprehensive and affordable blood work. You can sort of customize your blood work to look at whatever markers you want. We have a sort of a base test that you can add to it. And we'll go over your blood work and we'll educate you as to what these different bioindicators mean and what's important and how you can change them. And then we also do hormonal health. So people who have low testosterone and imbalanced hormones, we specialize in helping them get their hormones right. So it's a great business. We help people feel better. It's amazing. And then the other one is called Recovery CBD, and that is a United States-based and manufactured CBD company that creates 100% THC-free CBD. So it's very high quality. There's no THC in it. And we focus on sports recovery and pain. So some cool ventures to get into. We stayed sort of in the health sphere, but moving on to helping people in other ways.
Ian, when we think about this election cycle, and I know you're still very active, you mentioned now that you're residing in Florida, you're very active at the local level, but I'm fairly certain, obviously, I mean, I follow you on Twitter and Instagram, and I thank you again for the follow back. I know you have a great following and a great support system. Obviously, you know, you are, you're not shy about your political beliefs. I think, you know, both you and I being very conservative, realize at least this election cycle, and again, I don't say this to be hyperbolic, man. I would argue in my adult life, I can't remember an election as important as this one. We have seen the damage that this president has done in just 4 years. The economy, fuel, inflation, interest rates, sending billions of dollars overseas to corrupt regimes in Ukraine. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. Listen, I was in Wildwood a couple of weeks ago in the press pit when I saw the 45th president there speaking. Listen, I'm not sure. I'm not ready to sort of say that the 14 electoral votes that haven't gone red since 1988 to George H.W. Bush are ready to go to Donald Trump yet. But I mean, I think we're seeing a little bit of a tide turning when it comes to New Jersey residents, even in New York, perhaps seeing that Democrats and the ROI for people like myself. Again, you know me, I don't like to focus on identity politics, but the ROI for people of color like myself, brown people, black people, women, whoever, working class people, the ROI by Democrats has been atrocious. Donald Trump has a chance to really flip again, going back to, even New York. I mean, New York hasn't gone red since Ronald Reagan. I mean, we're talking about decades and decades of Democrat rule when it comes to those electoral votes. Do you feel the former president has a chance to maybe flip one of these two states?
I think in a fair election, he probably would have flipped it with Joe Biden. My biggest concerns are really about election integrity.
Correct.
I have deep concerns that the system is still very broken, and that's not to be pessimistic. That's just being sort of realistic. I think in a fair election, Donald Trump would win by a landslide. I think you can go into any neighborhood in this country and find at least a large number of Trump supporters, if not an overwhelming majority. It's sort of crossed all of the demographic lines at this point, because it's the problem is too difficult to ignore. When you can't leave the grocery store without spending $100, no matter what you buy, it starts. The elephant in the room gets too big for even anybody to ignore. And people don't necessarily have to say, "Hey, I was wrong," but a lot of people are, and they're saying, "I won't vote for Joe Biden again." So. In a fair election, I think Donald Trump would win by an absolute landslide of probably historic proportions. But I still do have some serious concerns about the election integrity system, or the election integrity system throughout this country. And there's a lot of efforts, and that's not to discourage sort of anybody who's doing anything, because there are a lot of really small groups who are really pushing hard and really doing a lot of work, but there's still a lot of holes in our system, and I still won't acknowledge the actual results of our current president. I don't think that anybody with a right mind at this point could, and I might be extreme for saying that, but I don't think that I am. So yeah, absolutely, I think he would flip it in a fair election, and I think the question is there enough support at this point to where you can't hide the election integrity issues?
I'm with you, man. Listen, I'm so concerned about. Listen, I understand vote by mail is something that Republicans have to embrace. It's not going away anywhere. I think Republicans have to make it work for them, the way Democrats have been able to do it. But listen, I mean, there are some elements here like early voting. I mean, listen, you want to fix it right away to some extent. Make Election Day a federal holiday. Like, we don't need Juneteenth. I'm sorry, I don't care how that sounds to anybody. Make Election Day a federal holiday. Like, at least make it easier for people to vote. I understand early voting, but even still, I'm concerned about that. We all know about vote by mail. We all know about the possible discrepancies that exist about vote by mail. And we know that certain legislatures in certain states have gone to address that. New Jersey, unfortunately, has not been one of them, where we know that vote by mail is still going to be sort of a serious, I think, player in the results of not just like House races in New Jersey, but ultimately the 14 electoral votes that go into obviously this year's presidential elections. But you live in Florida now. You're obviously living in a state with a very competent governor, a guy that has taken on the woke mob, has taken on progressives in the state of Florida, has been able to flip certain counties when it comes to registration. I never thought in my lifetime I'd see South Florida actually becoming redder as red as when it comes to
that's actually largely in part to the Latino community in South Florida.
No, certainly. When you look at Ron DeSantis, and I know that a lot of people are going to do Monday morning quarterbacking about his presidential run, do you still think that Ron DeSantis in 2028 or in the future can still be a viable candidate? Listen, he's been an amazing governor, great surplus in that state. He's reduced spending. He's taken on Disney. He's taken on the woke mob and progressives in the Sunshine State. Do you feel he still has good political capital in the next few election cycles, Ian?
I actually don't have much of an opinion about that. I think Ron DeSantis does a good job in many aspects running this state. Obviously, no governor is going to be perfect. There are some things that I strongly disagree with him on, mainly his speech laws. But I think overall, in terms of standard of living, that he does a very good job of sort of keeping Florida safe from the downward spiral that a lot of, especially metropolitan areas, have seen. The cities in Florida are pretty solid compared to a place like Philadelphia or many of the cities in Jersey that just seem to be on this really harsh downward spiral. Does he have a chance in 2028? Sure. He's probably one of the most prominent figures in the GOP, and I think that despite what happened during his presidential run, These guys run multiple times, and a lot of times they don't have a great campaign the first or second time, but they maintain a good figure in terms of conservative politics. And I think largely he accomplishes that. And he is charismatic, he is young, he does have a sort of a strong presence. And I think he could probably do well. But I think my hope is that in 2028 we'll have some rising stars that are a little bit different than what we've had from the GOP. I just think that we can do better, honestly, overall in terms of conservative politics.
You know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because again, we're big conservatives, and I'm someone that, not just as a journalist, but as an academic. I mean, I'm quite unapologetic about my conservative politics when it comes to my media brand. And I think that even here in New Jersey or down in Florida, where you reside at now, it's interesting how conservatism is very different for different people. I mean, I sort of look at the woke mob, and I look at them as sort of, an offspring of what liberals used to be, right? I mean, again, being an academic, I have so many classmates from grad school that are sort of traditional liberals. Even they, Ian, have said, listen, I'm a traditional liberal. I can't get on board with this woke stuff and this woke mob that seems to be hijacking the Democrat Party. Do you feel that maybe on the Republican side, or when it comes to right-wing politics or conservative politics, are we getting maybe that same type of pendulum swinging, where there are conservatives and maybe there are extremists, or there are rhinos? I mean, what concerns you right now as it stands with the Republican Party and even conservatives in general?
I think that's a great question, and it is a good observation. I think that the Conservative Party is absolutely, I think at the end of the day, everybody's going to vote, when it comes to this race, the same way. But I think that the Conservative Party is in for a bit of a split. Whether that's a good thing or bad thing, I don't know. But you definitely have a lot of liberty-minded conservatives who are sort of libertarian-leaning, who don't like the big government that GOP offers. You have a lot of anti-war conservatives who don't like just the blind backing of Israel no matter what, and who are concerned to be drawn into yet another war in the desert. And those are very, very big growing sentiments in the Conservative Party, and especially among a lot of what I would just say, Christians who hold very, very strong belief, and who don't, people like Candace Owens, who have had run-ins because they've questioned just even the premise of writing blank checks to Israel. So you're seeing a lot of support for people like that, and I think for good reason. So I think it's good in a lot of aspects, because it will force the GOP to adapt, because they can't lose their base, and they sort of need to maybe update their policies a little bit when it comes to how things are run, sort of on not only a national but an international standpoint. So, like I said, the liberty movement as well is something that's growing. You have people that can't really identify with libertarian policies, because they don't. There's not a whole lot of organization in that party and continuity. But you have people that value liberty over big government in a big way. And, the GOP doesn't necessarily represent liberty. They were sort of our best option when it came to COVID, but, these people are still very much big government, are still very much pushing towards the sort of globalist agenda. And we have a lot of those people in the GOP. So I think that, some differing opinions is a good thing. Because it will open some good debate and good discussion, and I'm sure it'll hurt some feelings along the way, but nobody really cares. And hopefully it'll ultimately sort of help the GOP really become a party for the people, because as it stands, as much as it's our best option, it's not a party for the people. It's still a party for big government. It's still a party for lobbyists. It's still a party for big money corporate interests. It's still a party for the pharmaceutical industry. We need to change that, and the GOP needs to become a party of the people that cherishes what the people think, listens to the people, votes for the people, and is not swayed by big money. So you're having a growing faction of conservatives starting to realize that there are some fundamental issues, and people are very outspoken about it. And it's a good thing. And like I said, it'll spark debate, and it'll hopefully change some minds and really kind of reform where we want to go, post 2024.
Ian, I don't disagree whatsoever. Not sure. Obviously, I know you just came on at the top of the hour, but the first half of tonight's double main event was a Senate candidate up here in New Jersey. And I mentioned to him that obviously one of the big issues for me as a conservative during this cycle is the fact that, Donald Trump during his presidency, I, as a conservative, love this constructionist majority in the Supreme Court. I love the court decisions we've seen in recent years, whether it's about Roe versus Wade, whether it's about Second Amendment issues, whether it's about affirmative action. I have liked this constructionist majority, again, interpreting the Constitution as is. I'm concerned that, should Joe Biden get reelected with two guys on the Supreme Court in their mid to late 70s, again, that's not old in life years, but I mean, they could step down. And the last thing I want is to give Joe Biden another Supreme Court pick. We already saw what happened with Ketanji Jackson. What an absolute disgrace that was. I certainly don't want to do that with Joe Biden. I don't want to give him any other, obviously judicial nominees whatsoever. I was really a fan of the president. So for me, I look at judicial nominees as a big talking point as a conservative during this election cycle. How do you see it, Ian?
Yeah, it's all important. Everything is on the table at this point. That's sort of a macro problem, and we've got a whole bunch of micro problems, and then we've got some macro problems, and then we've got some really big macro problems. The Supreme Court justices is very important because that sort of sets the interpretation of the law of the land for years and years to come. So obviously that's important, but I think for a lot of people, they're not even thinking that big. Not necessarily that's a good thing or a bad thing to be thinking that, but I think a lot of people are really just focused on like the task ahead, and on the problems that are in front of their faces. I've seen various statistics, but life for the average like 3-person or 2-person family is like $11,000 more expensive than it was just a couple of years ago, and the middle class is not designed to take that sort of abrupt hit. And it's just sort of this continuation of the assault on the middle class. We've seen it. It started years ago subtly, but we really saw it come to fruition with COVID, where they didn't care about small businesses. Small businesses are the middle class. Corporations got to profit, and again, another number I saw, I forget the exact number of billions, but it was like, corporations profited, $3.8 billion in 2020 and 2021. And there was another statistic that shows, the middle class lost $3.7 billion or whatever the ridiculous figure is. So it's just this continuation of the assault on the middle class where, your dollars are just continuously worth less because, Congress and the president just arbitrarily send billions and trillions of dollars to God knows where for God knows what. And the job market gets sort of less optimistic, and people stop spending money. And then we have this sort of downward economic spiral. I think that's at the forefront of everybody's mind. It's hard. It gets very hard to be able to even focus on bigger problems when you have these issues with the middle class now, who, people who were fine a couple of years ago are not fine, and they're having to really tighten their belts and cut back. And if that doesn't stop soon, we're gonna see worse economic conditions, and that will affect even the healthiest of businesses. That will affect what's left of the middle class, business class. In terms of small business, because who's going to gobble up the business when it's no longer profitable or maintainable for small businesses to stay open? Amazon and Walmart and all of those. So, the Supreme Court thing is definitely an issue, but it comes down right now is like putting the fire out in front of us, I think, and. Both can be solved with the same thing. It's obviously not electing Joe Biden is the solution to both that big problem and the problem right in front of us. But yeah, it's all on the table. Everything is sort of relevant and in play at this point. Every aspect of everybody's lives, from the laws that get passed to the things that we do with our money internationally, to how we're treated as civilians at home, the economy, and everything in between. It's literally all on the table. So yeah, it's a very consequential election. It's something that people should be deeply involved in whatever way that they are capable of. You want to make an impact, go sign up as a poll watcher. Really the price that we pay to have a good functioning, noble, and free society is that we do have to contribute, and we can't just just vote for Donald Trump and hope for the best. Even if his intentions are pure and he wants the best, and wants to save America, he's going to need a lot of help. So don't sit around and just hope that your vote counts. Like I said, it doesn't take a whole lot of work to sign up for 2 days to be a poll watcher, and make sure that your local elections are counting votes the right way. And do what you can. We can't always make a huge impact, right? But we can make a meaningful one. And if a million, 10 million, or 100 million people decide to do that tomorrow, we could really turn things around in a meaningful way, quickly.
Well said there. Ian, you mentioned about Donald Trump needing help, obviously, to try to get the country in a better direction. Speculation is running rampant that his running mate could be the junior U.S. Senator out of South Carolina, Tim Scott. Not sure if you've heard that. I've heard that through some good sources down in D.C. Does that sound like a good pick for you, or who would you like to see the 45th president pick as his running mate?
Tim Scott doesn't really impress me as a candidate. I know he's very pro-Trump, and that's nice, but I don't look at him as a congressman who's been particularly brave or courageous or really has fought for the American people in a really significant way. I'd like to see a lot of different people. Rand Paul, I think, would be a better option. I think Thomas Massey would be a fantastic option. I think that's a really good balance between where Trump is at in terms of conservatism, and representing the sort of the liberty base and the small government base. I think both of those would be a phenomenal choice. I think he could really win over a lot of people with those votes. I think Tim Scott is a very safe one for mainstream conservatism, and I think if he branched out a little bit and went with one of those two options, or I'm sure there's others, somebody who's a little more has just a different aspect and a different view on what conservatism means, he would probably pull a lot more people from the center, because both of those gentlemen have been sort of spot on with COVID, spot on with government spending, spot on with sort of pushing back against the wastefulness of big government. And that is a huge issue for a lot of people, because that's the source of most of our issues, whether it's Joe Biden or Donald Trump or anybody else. We have a government that is wildly out of control at the federal level. They spend money like it grows on trees. I mean, they literally print it, and they're printing money for our children's children to pay off with their taxes. I mean, they've surpassed what we could ever pay back in a lifetime. And we're not going to have any real change until we start looking at that issue, the ballooning national debt. Eventually, all of these roller coasters will come to an end if you keep sort of pressing on the throttle. So I'd like to see somebody like that in there, although I realize with Trump it's more about the Trump brand, more about the Save America brand. And he has a very strong brand. So Tim Scott, in terms of that, strategically for him, and I think what he's trying to accomplish is a sound choice.
Ian, listen, I think you've known me long enough. I'm not a big fan of identity politics. I don't like to sort of go down the road like Democrats do, where everything is about pandering. But do you think Republicans maybe need to do that during this cycle when it comes to the president's pick? Again, whether it's a woman of color, Hispanic, a black man. Do you think Republicans need to go that route, or is it just about picking someone that's going to be about small government, about responsible spending, about making sure we're not funding additional wars? I mean, how do you look at sort of playing field, as they say, about what we should sort of acquiesce to?
I think you can sort of accomplish both, honestly. I think people are at the point realistically where black, brown, woman, man, whatever. I don't think people are really paying attention to identity politics at this point, because things are just so hard. And it's hard to look at where you're at today and look at where you were at in 2018. Again, whether you're black, brown, white, male, woman, first generation immigrant, whatever. It's hard to say, man, my life was way better in 2019. Like, I don't think anybody's going to say that. So, the identity politics, obviously it's still a factor at play, but I just don't think it's as important. I think I think the message of getting government under control, even if people don't agree politically, we're at a point where most people just hate the government and just assume that they're all bad. And you can find Democrats who feel like that, who don't like Trump, for ideological reasons, but also don't like their own party. And you'll find Republicans too, who aren't really excited about voting for Trump because they're sort of tired of the back and forth of like, things are going to get fixed. Things are going to get fixed, and it's this just big, very wasteful government that really needs to be. I'd like to see issues on the table like term limits. I'd love to hear Trump talking about term limits or campaign funding or lobbyists. Because again, these are the people that push laws through Congress, and Trump is one man. Trump can do a lot, and he did a lot, but look how much he was sort of strangleheld by in his 4 years. Look what he wasn't able to accomplish that he genuinely wanted to.
Yeah.
But we've got this sort of out of control government that even as the president, you can't wrangle in because, as you call it, the deep state. All of these factors sort of need to be looked at with equal importance as the presidential race. Again, that's why even your local race really matters.
Ian, it's funny, AOC was basically broke when she ran for the House in 2018. And, if I'm not mistaken, the starting salary for a member of the House of Representatives is about $175,000. She's now worth $20 million. Go figure.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. Yeah. And what's crazy is you can pick any congressman or woman, any senator, and that's a trend you'll see regardless of party lines. And that should be something that's a uniting issue for Democrats and Republicans. We should start looking at, hey, like maybe we're both kind of getting played. Maybe they play the Democrats and the Karens and the Black community and the Latino community just as much as they play people on the right. And we need to start looking at really honest candidates who aren't looking to line their pockets, who don't look at this as a career and look at it more as a public service, because that's what politics is supposed to be about. It's not a career. We shouldn't have a political ruling class. We should have a forever rotating door of citizens who are stepping into the position because they want what's best for the community, the country, the state, whatever. But we don't have that. We have a system that operates on money and that people get into and they don't want to leave because they can walk in to a nice salary. I mean, the salary's nice, but they can take that salary and use their powers quietly sort of behind the doors of DC and turn that $175,000 salary into 20 million in 8 years or whatever she's been around. But like I said, that's not just her. Look at somebody like Dan Crenshaw. I mean, he's got one of the hottest stock portfolios on the market. So it's a left and right issue with these people. Correct. And I would love to see the GOP start talking about that on a more frequent basis. I know that it does get mentioned, but I think issues like that, you want to win an election, start talking about that, and you'll pull Democrat voters no matter what they think of Donald Trump.
Well said, Ian. Ian, before I let you go, getting back to your personal story, and I know that it's 4 years later, and sometimes we make choices. We think we do it for the right reasons. We have learned you did them for the right reasons. Looking back on it, not to sort of engage in revisionist history or Monday morning quarterbacking, is there anything you could have done better or maybe regret doing when you took a stand back in 2020? Again, we all applaud the effort. I applaud your courage. I was always in your corner, still am in your corner, for the record. I'm the only journalist that really did that openly and publicly. But looking back on it, is there something maybe you could have done better, or did everything happen the way it was supposed to happen?
That's a tough question. Obviously, I think had I known that it would take the way that it did in court, I think we probably, you could Monday morning quarterback that all day and say we should have made different arguments or anything like that, because we were putting forward the good arguments, but the court was shooting them down. So maybe there was other arguments that would have been sort of unable to be circumvented even by the EO. So, I mean, you can't really think too much about that. But in terms of the overall, there's not much I would change. Maybe a little bit more aggressive from the beginning. We really opened with a lot of respect publicly. We We notified the township, the local police department. We put forth our public plan, both on social media, on media like Tucker Carlson, and sort of out in the open for any public official to look at. We asked for compromise, really genuinely hoping that we were just making mistakes and that this wasn't this sort of insidious plan. And obviously, it was an insidious plan. It wasn't a mistake. I think we sort of just maybe would have had a little bit more firepower coming from the gate, telling these people that not only were they wrong, but they were doing it on purpose, and that maybe just a little bit more aggressive. But I think ultimately, through all of the stress and all of the chaos and all of the fallout, it was still the best choice that we could have made in that situation. And I don't think anybody who was involved at any level would take that choice back. From the people that showed up at the gym every day to the couple people who got citations and people who got arrested, and our attorneys who went through hell and back with us. I think everybody sort of agrees that the right choice was made, and that we did the best with what we had in terms of information, and that what we did was it came from a moral place, that it wasn't just about the gym, it was about the bigger picture. These were all of our points from the very beginning. So there's not a whole lot I regret. Like I said, maybe it would have just been opening with a little less love and affection towards the government, and hoping that they compromise, and maybe more of a double barrel salute from the beginning.
If it was left up to Ian Smith, what's the most fitting consequence or fate for Phil Murphy?
I think he should be homeless and begging for change, and he should live the rest of his life like that, because he's ruined enough lives that that he deserves a miserable rest of his life, because he did so willingly, and he has not even flinched in terms of an apology for it. And he's not a good person. He's not somebody that made mistakes. This is a man who's hungry on power, that looks at the people that he rules over as subjects. This isn't a good person. Like I said, it's not somebody who made a mistake. There's room for mistake in politics. There's room for mistakes in leadership. But a true leader would come back and say, I got this wrong, and I want to fix it. And he just keeps driving Jersey politics into the ground. What he's doing now with the offshore power system is horrible. And again, he's just doesn't listen to anybody, and he just continues on his way. So I think all of that wealth that he's amassed should go back to the people of Jersey, and he should beg for change on the corner for the rest of his life.
You know what? I'm with you on that one, man. I think that would be fate most fitting for Phil Murphy, and as well as his enablers, right? I mean, because he had enablers in the legislature, whether it was Speaker Coughlin, at the time Steve Sweeney.
I think that goes for anybody involved in the COVID narrative.
Yep. No, listen, I'm with you, and again, it's something that a little bit of karma, right, with his wife getting shut down, and what he was attempting to do very arrogantly and trying to get her to win that primary for a Senate seat. I think that a little bit of karma was a good thing. Hopefully more karma comes his way, Ian. Hopefully as his term comes to an end, thankfully, at the end of next year. Ian, listen, I want to get you back on as the case unravels.
Sure.
Listen, obviously we'll keep in touch. I'll be in Florida in August. I'll hit you up, obviously. We can maybe grab dinner when I'm down there, man. It'd be great to see you and
sounds good.
Catch up. But listen, keep me posted about what's going on with your court case. Obviously, I'm so happy to hear that you have this victory. And it's leave it to NJ.com. More on them in a little bit. Kind of like poo-pooing and undermining your victory. You want to talk about a news site that was always looking to undermine you and your business partner.
Yeah, they were pretty good at it
in your pursuit, and now it looks like they're going to be going out of business soon. I think, talk about karma. I think that's also fitting for something like NJ.com. Yes, listen, such as listen, you want to F around, you're gonna find out. That's what happened before you're there. Real quick before I let you go, how's fatherhood been? And obviously, listen, you've been such a public figure, but now obviously, you wear many hats. The newest hat is being a dad.
Yeah, it's a blessing from God. I'm thankful every day. It's Everybody tells you that it'll change your life, and you hear it all the time, and then it happens, and you realize, like, wow, oh, everything, like your whole life, and it's always in the best way. So it really weeds out sort of what's important, what's not, what's worth fighting for, and where my values really lie, because there's a little boy who depends on me. So I couldn't ask for anything more.
Bro, I've grown out my beard multiple times in the last few years. I think you've seen it on social media. Listen, it itches like crazy in the summer. It is just unbearable. I don't know how you do it, man. What's the secret to keeping that beard nice and thick and groomed? I mean, come on, man. What's the secret here?
A good barber and some good beard oil, and that's it, man.
Okay. Well, you know what? I'm not
a good barber goes a long way.
Okay. Well, I just trim it myself. I mean, obviously, it's not as
Nope. You gotta get somebody to do it for you.
Okay, good to know.
Just like a good haircut.
Well, there you go. That's right. And Ian, man, listen. When I first met you in 2020 online, and we were collaborating, and we were obviously, I had you on the show multiple times. I couldn't tell you how proud I was to really share your story and to be an outlet for you when really the establishment media in New Jersey was looking to make you a villain, and we've all learned that the villain was Phil Murphy and his enablers in the legislature. So congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Your legal victory. And we'll keep an eye on what's going on with you. And we appreciate being a fan of Jersey First TV, man. I'll give you the last word tonight.
That's it, man. Just kind of reiterating what I said about getting involved at the local level. There's the ability to make drastic change, but it's not one big thing that's going to change Jersey politics or your local politics or even federal politics. It's going to be a whole bunch of little changes driven by the American people, and it's no different than what we accomplished at the gym. We wouldn't have done it had it not been for everybody behind us. What we've achieved and what we were able to do, and sort of push off the state and be able to stay open that whole time despite everything that was happening to us, and even get to the point where we can sort of stay on our feet financially long enough to get to this point in court, is largely due to the individual contributions of everybody who sort of chipped in. So don't underestimate how powerful your choices are. So go to that school board meeting, support that local candidate, go out, donate your time, your energy, your money if you have some extra money, and really get involved. And if you would have asked me 4 years ago if the choice of opening a small gym in a sleepy suburb of New Jersey would have the impact on the world that it did, I would have laughed, and I would have said the same lie that everybody tells themselves, and I'm just one person. But when a whole bunch of people get together and get behind a movement and really contribute to it, anything is possible.
Bro, I love your courage. And again, thank you for believing in Real Talk with Jersey First TV. Again, I appreciate you. You talk to a lot of media outlets. I'm glad that Real Talk stays on your radar as well, brother.
Absolutely. Have a great night, man. Thanks for having me on.
All right. Have a good one. And we'll talk to you again soon here on Jersey First TV. Folks, great interview there with Ian Smith, and a guy who, demonstrated a lot of courage during COVID, and a guy who demonstrated a lot during the pandemic, and what Governor Phil Murphy and Senate President Steve Sweeney and Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin were doing to him. It was, again, it was tyrannical. It was really just awful. And thankfully, 4 years later, it took a little bit of time, but he's getting those legal victories. And hopefully those are not just the end of it. Hopefully there's more legal victories to come for Ian Smith and his legal team. Obviously, the way he was treated during the pandemic, and certainly he was proven right. Like many of us, like yours truly, that were challenging the COVID narrative in New Jersey. Again, folks, I never got vaccinated. I chose not to, not because of politics. Again, it's the same reason I've never gotten a flu shot all these years. And for people that want to talk about, well, Fernando's governed by politics with his choices. No, I'm not actually. I believed in what's best for my body. I know what's best for it. And never did I let politics play a decision in that role. And I know that people like Ian Smith share that same sentiment, and so did millions upon millions of Americans that did not want to acquiesce to the tyrannical COVID mandates here in New Jersey, and certainly throughout all the blue states that got it wrong during the pandemic. So once again, thank you to Ian Smith. for a very enlightening conversation here tonight as part of tonight's double main event here, folks. The first one and perhaps the only one of 2024. I know we've kept it to just one guest a week. It's been a pretty long episode here. I'm sure my bosses at Jersey First TV are probably going to want to have a talk with me tomorrow morning after this long episode. But we appreciate the two guests tonight. Again, U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party, Curtis Bashaw, and entrepreneur and former U.S. House candidate, Ian Smith, our guest tonight here on Real Talk. Folks, before we call it a night, you don't want to go anywhere because it is time for final thoughts. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before with Ian Smith, obviously, news sites in New Jersey certainly got it wrong when it came to the COVID mandate and certainly the way that they treated people like Ian Smith. And the news site that comes to mind, and somebody that comes to mind specifically, right, we all know, is the clown known as Tommy Boy. Yes, Tom Moran. And one of the things about Thomas that always never really sat well with me was the fact that Thomas thinks he's sort of like the end-all be-all about journalism, being the editor-in-chief of perhaps one of the biggest garbage editorial boards in the state, and that's the Star-Ledger. But what's interesting about Tommy, and folks, it's it is karma, right? Because what happens, Tommy, when you decide to take my name and put it in a column and take shots at me, what you do and what you did is you directly put yourself up here for me. And folks, I'm never going to forget it. I'm going to keep receipts and I'm going to have it in for you, Tommy, for as long as I'm breathing. And that's the Cuban in me here. So what you did directly is get yourself into a lot of hot water with New Jersey's premier journalist. But one of the best pieces of news that I got last week, folks, okay, and that is, again, shout out to my good friend David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, the absolute best news site in New Jersey politics and media. And he announced that the Star-Ledger put this in their email blast last week. Star-Ledger announced a new no refund policy. Now, again, I don't subscribe to the Star-Ledger or NJ.com. Obviously, I use somebody else's account because why would I give any money to NJ.com? Why would I waste gigabytes in my data plan? So, of course, as you can see there, you put the tweet up there. Dear subscriber, thank you for supporting NJ.com with your subscription. Please be advised of our policy change regarding subscription cancellations. Effective June 23rd, 2024, refunds will no longer be automatically processed for cancellations. Instead, your access to our site and all subscriber-exclusive content will continue until the end of your current subscription term. Thank you again for being a subscriber. We look forward to continuing to promote you with oh, this is great. With quality local journalism serving New Jersey. Folks, really? Quality local journalism serving New Jersey. If you have any questions or concerns about this change, please contact customer care or at digitalservice@nj.com or by calling 1-888-782-7533. Best regards, NJ.com's customer service team. So, folks, if you have a chance, dial 1-888-782-7533 and tell them and remind them how much NJ.com and the Star-Ledger suck, because they do suck. But, folks, when you see this notification from a news site, what it's telling you is that very soon we're going to be living in the reality that NJ.com and hopefully the Star-Ledger go out of business. And folks, is there a more deserving garbage news site than NJ.com and the Star-Ledger that should go out of business? The way they've treated people over the years, again, Ian Smith, conservatives, Republicans, everyday New Jerseyans, hardworking middle class, small business owners, people who dare to defy Trenton. That's who NJ.com and the Star Ledger have gone after. That's who Tommy Boy has gone after. So if there's anyone that deserves to lose his job, it's Tom Moran. But you know what? I don't want to be vengeful. I don't want to be, vindictive. Because, folks, again, New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist and top 50 Latino, and certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. Listen, I have a heart. I'm compassionate. Okay? I have empathy. So when NJ.com and the Star Ledger go out of business fairly soon, because again, folks, news sites don't send out an email like this without even giving you the inference, they're in serious trouble. So any new subscribers, yeah, you're not going to get a refund because pretty much it's telling you they'll be out of business soon. Now, having said the fact that the NJ.com and the Star Ledger will be out of business soon, it kind of got me thinking, what could Tom Moran do for a living once he's out of a job, once he can't pontificate with his garbage editorials and continue with his virtue signaling or his usual Trump derangement syndrome or his enabling of bad progressive policies and enabling and coddling the woke mob and coddling the illegals and coddling jihadists on college campuses and everything that's toxic about progressive politics, everything that's toxic about the left. That is what Tom Moran has been a champion of. So it got me thinking, what could Tom Moran be really good at? Because if it's not writing columns, let's be honest, is Tom Moran really good at anything? So it got me thinking, I know of a career that Tom Moran would be amazing with. And you know what? Now that I think about it, it got me thinking the best job Tom Moran could get once NJ.com and the Star Ledger go out of business, and from what it looks like fairly soon, you know what? Go to McDonald's.com/careers, Tommy, and I'm pretty sure that hat and you working a drive-through will work wonders for your character, or really lack thereof. So again, folks, next time you see Tom Moran on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook, if you see him in person, just be like, hey, Tom, could you practice that line working at the drive-through? Would you like fries with your Happy Meal or combo meal? I mean, maybe you can say like, good morning. Would you like some fries with that? Or good afternoon. Will that be all? Or good evening. Welcome to McDonald's. Hi, I'm Tom. Would you like some fries? I'm not sure what Tom Moran would like to practice, but again, folks, I'm compassionate. I don't wish him any harm, but I certainly don't wish him well. And with all the harm he's done at NJ.com and the Star Ledger, if there's anyone that should be serving fries, yes, folks, it's Tom Moran. And believe me, when I learned about potentially what could be the fate of NJ.com and the Star Ledger, folks, you know what my reaction was? That's what it was. I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. And I'm going to laugh even more when I get to see Tom Moran on the unemployment line. If anyone deserves it, it's New Jersey's resident virtue signaler and whiny crybaby. Yes, all 5'5", all 100 pounds of Tom Moran. Again, and I know what you're saying. Fernando, you're being so mean. Okay? He's a senior citizen. He's 89 years old. Why are you picking on old people? I'm not picking on old people. I'm picking on bad old people. And that's what Tom Moran is. So again, Tom, not sure what drive-through I might catch you at in the near future, but do me a favor. When I order fries, I like extra ketchup. So again, folks, hopefully we'll be seeing the resident clown, Tom Moran, hopefully serving fries at your local McDonald's or Burger King or Wendy's or Chick-fil-A, wherever. Because let's be honest, if it's not writing columns, really, what else is Tom Moran good for? Other than just being a clown. Folks, speaking of clowns, yes, I would be remiss to not mention Insider NJ's resident clown and whiny little girl, right? One of my least favorite women in New Jersey media, that's Jay Lassiter. And folks, Jay Lassiter, of course, loves to, virtue signal, of course. And we see, obviously, some of the things that Jay Lassiter likes to put out on Twitter. But something that was brought to my attention, again, I don't follow this woman on Twitter. But what was interesting about Jay Lassiter over the weekend was apparently took exception with one of our distinguished state senators, Mike Testa. And as he decided to, direct tweet at Riley Gaines, the former swimmer with the University of Kentucky, a great conservative star on the rise, who is proud to stand up for biological women in sports, right? Mike Testa tweets this weekend at Riley Gaines, these quote girls can run all they want. They can't run from their DNA. My bill is awaiting its day in the New Jersey legislature, actually protecting young women from this nonsense. It's time to pass the Fairness in Women's Sports Act now. Protecting women's sports is common sense, right? So, of course, leave it to Jay Lassiter, who's pretty much home all day, smoking weed. When was the last time this guy published a column, right? So, of course, Jay Lassiter decides to tweet. Again, I just saw a screenshot it there. He could have done something to lower our property taxes, but I guess he's too busy preening for the wingnuts. No, Jay, what he's doing is standing up for biological women. Okay? Like biological women, not you. I mean, you're a woman in general, but you're not biologically a woman. But for biological women that are playing sports, for young women in high school that are looking to maybe get a college scholarship. But because Trenton is so fixated on acquiescing to the woke mob and the alphabet army, and God help me, folks, it's 3 days away. The worst 30 days of the year is Pride Month. I don't mind saying it out loud. It's going to be insufferable in New Jersey, whether it be in Hoboken with Robbie Bala and the Lollipop Guild and that garbage administration in Hoboken, or all these other woke activists in New Jersey politics. Believe me, they're going to have a field day in 3 days with the start of Pride Month. But no, Jay. And what's interesting, though, again, for Jay to talk about, doing something to lower our property taxes. Again, Jay is blindly supported one party that has had a majority rule for over 20 years in the legislature. It's not Republicans. It's not conservatives like me that, understand economics, that understand fiscal responsibility. Nothing that Jay is familiar with. Again, Jay is a girl who lives at home with her husband, living off her husband's money, right? Publishing maybe one column a month, if anything. Jay, really? You're in no position to talk about property. First of all, you don't pay any property because you don't own anything. Okay? I mean, your husband owns you, but that's a conversation for another day. Okay? And what's interesting about people like Jay Lassiter and the insufferable members of the woke left in New Jersey is this is what you want to go after Mike Testa. When Mike Testa has been nothing but an admirable civil servant in the state Senate in New Jersey, advocating for fiscal responsibility. But this is what you want to go after? Of course, he's been advocating for lowering property taxes. But it's Democrats that you support in Trenton that have no desire to do that. But Jay Lassiter would rather make you believe that he cares about that. Okay? For a scrawny little girl that doesn't pay property taxes, that smokes weed all day, okay, who on social media on multiple occasions can't keep my name out of his mouth. Well, I mean, Jay struggles with keeping a lot of things out of his mouth, but that's a conversation for another day, which is, by the way, which is why your quality of life sucks, Jay. But again, a conversation for another day. I find it funny when clowns like Jay Lassiter want to talk about fiscal responsibility and why people in Trenton are more concerned about that than worrying about standing up for biological women in sports. Okay? Jay, again, I understand that for you, I mean, the only sport your scrawny little ass can play, if anything, is tennis, and that's fine. It's a good sport. But for people that play other more active sports, young women, guess what? The last thing they need is to not be on an even playing field. But you don't care about that. And neither do other people in New Jersey media or politics. You think anybody insider ain't Jake? Of course not. Max Bazzari's too busy eating in his house. And not like he ever leaves his house. Or Pete O'Nelia taking advertising dollars from the NJEA and other far-left unions. Or the New Jersey Mile with Little Terry, another one that's going to be, oh, I'm so oppressed as a gay man. Yes, because you here in New Jersey, you don't live well. Okay, sure, Terrence. But keep bitching and moaning about Pride Month. Right? Or Uncle Dave with NJ Spotlight News, who I'm sure will have some altruistic and sanctimonious segments about Pride Month. Or Charles Stahl with NorthJersey.com. Or Tommy with NJ.com. Folks, it's these type of insufferable virtue signalers that continue to make New Jersey the dump that it is. So when we continue to have the highest property taxes in the country, you think Jay Lassiter's calling out the legislature during budget season? No, he's more concerned about Mike Testa standing for biological girls. He's more concerned acquiescing to the alphabet mob about how bad he has it as being gay in New Jersey. Jay, you have it pretty well here in New Jersey. Now, if your ancestors didn't, oh, well, tough shit. Life happens. I don't know what to tell you. But you live pretty well in New Jersey. And the amount of bitching and moaning you'll still do between June 1st and June 30th, I'm sure will be as epic as ever. And also, along with all the minions that support you on your social media. We all know the usual insufferable minions. Okay? Maria Rodriguez-Gregg, Hetty Rosenstein, Terrence McDonald. Who else? Anjali Malhotra, Corin Frankfurt. Who else? Let me think here. I don't know. Oh, Julie Larea Borst. All these insufferable women, along with you, Jay, and another insufferable woman, will bitch and moan how bad the alphabet army has it when you really don't. But don't be fooled, folks. Jay is never, ever interested in really solving problems. He just likes bitching and moaning about it, which makes him a really typical girl to begin with. And those are my final thoughts. Of course, folks, to both Tom Moran and Jay Lassiter, whenever I see them on social media, this is the reaction we all have. Because do we really take them seriously? Yeah, I doubt it. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank my two guests, U.S. Senate candidate for the Republican Party, Curtis Bashaw, an entrepreneur and former House candidate in the 3rd Congressional District, Ian Smith. Great conversations during this election cycle. Folks, again, make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. And if you watch YouTube, like I know many of you do, click the subscribe button and you'll be automatically notified of all the great content brought to you by Jersey First TV. Of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere at any time during the upcoming summer months. And folks, I can't say enough about how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. The leader in independent media in New Jersey. That's right, folks. It is Jersey First TV. Always educating and advocating for the residents here in the Garden State. Brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the amazing Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Rimbolo premiere every Thursday. And of course, every Monday night, we'll be back in our regular scheduled time next week, folks, on Monday night. Check your local listings. Brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night. And I can't say enough, folks, if it's always unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it is always Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino as voted on by the Latino Spirit Online magazine. And certainly, I'll continue to be the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media because my level of honesty, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It is me, Fernando Uribe. Enjoy the rest of May. We'll see you next month. Obviously, in the month of June, I know, unfortunately, it's Pride Month. We'll have to hear all the bitching and moaning of the alphabet mob about how bad they have it. Folks, last time I heard, you're not really oppressed if you're being celebrated every minute of the day. So, unfortunately, yes, folks, we'll see you next Monday night here as Pride Month begins, not just in New Jersey, but nationally here on Jersey First TV. So, tune in next Monday night, folks. And again, I can't say enough how grateful I am to all of you for tuning in every single week. I am Fernando Uribe. Folks, thank you for tuning in again. Please party responsibly. Again, as the summer begins, hey, catch a Lyft or Uber, wherever. Always remember, if you can't be good, be bad, baby. Take care of yourselves. Again, look after your elderly neighbors and kids during these hot days. Again, folks, don't mind anyone suffering from heat stroke during these dog days of summer. Once again, folks, I want to thank you for tuning in to Real Talk right here with Jersey First TV. Always remember, thanks for stopping by and stay classy, everyone.